All right, everybody, it is that time. We have made it through the initial phases of the off season. We have taken a look at all the things we need to take a look at. Now we need to open it up on open free agency, which is a little less than a month away. We've got a lot of stuff to go through here. The Seahawks are still going to have a lot of needs in mid-March. There's no way they're going to be able to close everything up with their own guys. So, we're going to go through the positional groups of free agency, and we're going to go basically in order of biggest need to lowest need. So that way the stuff that we really care about is going to be at the front. And then as we go along, we get towards things that are more like, oh, this would be nice. This is a possibility, but we're not going to sweat it too much. So we're going to lead off with tight end here because the way I see it, the tight end is the first position the Seahawks have this offseason that is a massive need. Because if you're going through the positions in order, quarterback, not a major need right now. Running back, definitely not. Wide receiver, definitely not. So tight end is the first position I want to look at here. Fant is a free agent. We've talked about him. Colby is a free agent. We've talked about him. Disley's in the last year of his deal, and we save over $7 million, or I think it's actually exactly $7 million if he gets released. So we might need 3 new tight ends. There's a very good chance we're going to need 2 new tight ends. At the very least, we're going to need a new tight end, 1 new tight end. At the minimum, we're going to need 1 new tight end. There's no way we bring the whole gang back. So we're going to start with free agency, and this is going to focus in on players that you would bring in and have confidence that they could start. They could be your tight end 1, and you would be at least okay with that. So, for starters, let's go big. Who is a free agent tight end the Seahawks could get that would be a long-term TE1, a franchise tight end? Maybe not one of the best tight ends in the league, but a really good tight end that you feel like would be there for you for the next at least 3 years. Well, I got to tell you, if that's what you're looking for, first of all, you're probably better off just bringing back Fant or maybe Parkinson. Like, literally, those might be your 2 best options. But we already talked about those guys. There's one guy in free agency this year who might be able to meet that criteria. It is Dalton Schultz. Dalton Schultz, formerly of the Cowboys, now of the Texans. He's put together a really good career these last 4 years. Ever since Blake Jarwin got injured in Dallas, he's become a really quality passing game option. So if you're looking for somebody who can be like a long-term tight end solution, this is the only guy out there that I could find. Over the last 4 seasons, he's amassed over 2,600 receiving yards. He's caught over 370 passes. So he had a 100 target season. I'm sorry, it's not 370. I meant to say 260 passes. I was looking at the wrong column here. But regardless, he's had 4 really notable seasons in a row. Last year, he went to Houston, playing with C.J. Stroud, and still put up good quality numbers, almost 60 catches. So he proved that he could have success in a different offense, in a different system. By the way, he's missed a couple games in each of the last 2 years, so these numbers are being put up even with him missing a couple games. He's relatively young still. He's about to be turning 28 here. PFF, relatively high on him this most recent season. They graded him out to be about 73 overall. And there's every reason to believe that if you got Dalton Schultz, he would be your guy for about 3 to 4 years before he starts to break down, gets to that age. Remember, his first 2 years in the league, he barely played, so he doesn't have the wear and tear on him of a typical 28-year-old. Now, Spotrac estimates Dalton Schultz would cost somewhere around 3 years, $34 million. I think that's probably within the acceptable bounds. I think that's probably a reasonable expectation. He's not one of these super duper athlete tight ends who's going to command like wide receiver money, but he's been productive for long enough to where I think he's earned this long-term deal that's going to pay him quite a bit. This is still less than I expect Noah Fant to get, by the way, because Noah Fant is one of those super athlete types. Maybe Schultz ends up settling for something like 3 years, 30, but I do think you're going to give him that 8-figure-a-year deal if you want him. And I would not be opposed to it. I don't love it, but I think it would be all right. So Dalton Schultz, that's your one option if you're hitting this tight end crop, trying to find a guy who can carry you for the next several years. Everybody else is somebody who you're just kind of getting and hoping they got like 1, maybe 2 years left in them at a quality clip. You're not signing them thinking, okay, this is going to take care of us for the next 3-4 years. So we're lowering our expectations a little bit with these next several guys, but they are guys who probably can come in and give you a year, maybe 2 years of decent play. So we're going to start with Hunter Henry here. He's been around a while, most recently with the New England Patriots, but he spent a long time as a Charger, put up some nice seasons there, had some 600, close to 700-yard seasons, but always had an injury problem in this league, always had issues staying on the field, and his production, even when he's on the field, has started to peter. Last year, he did catch 6 touchdowns, but barely over 400 yards, the worst season of his career in terms of receiving yards. And he had 42 catches, which was good, but it also shows that his yards per reception is starting to drop off, which is indicative of him losing some of his downfield explosiveness and ability to make things happen after the catch. Only played in 14 games last year, which isn't that bad, admittedly. And look, even the injury stuff from earlier in his career isn't as bad as it used to be. I mean, he played 17 games, 2 straight years in New England, but it's clearly going in a different direction for him. If you get Hunter Henry, you're hoping that he gives you 1 good year of relatively clean and good play, and then you can find your long-term options next offseason, or have those long-term options develop in 2024, be ready to take the reins in 2025. So PFF did like when he played, for whatever that's worth, almost a 70 grade, and that's actually an improvement over 2022, by the way, for whatever that's worth. But you are definitely crossing your fingers on this one. He's only going to be 29 this season. That's not even that old. But with the issues this guy has had in his career, staying healthy at the position, and the fact that he's getting older, you are kind of rolling the dice here with Hunter Henry. Now, Spotrac estimates 1 year, $7.6 million, which I think you can maybe get it down to like 1 year 6, maybe 1 year 6.5. But it's probably going to be something in this rough area. Again, you don't want to be paying for past production, and if you do give him the full 7.5, you are kind of paying for past production, right? Because he's on a downward trend. 2 years ago, 600 yards. 1 year ago, 500 yards. Last year, 400 yards. He's on a downward slope. So I think it would be a mistake to pay him assuming that he's going to get back to his Chargers form, his 650-yard form. So I would imagine something like 1 year, $6 million is a little more realistic. And it's not the worst. It's not really something I'm super into, though, admittedly. All right, so another guy would be our old buddy, Gerald Everett. This guy's about to turn 30, and he's coming off 2 pretty okay years with the Chargers. I think he's still a starter in this league. Not a great starter or anything, but he is one of those really good athlete tight ends. And he is somebody who, I mean, a lot of the people got pushed out of the organization over the last offseason, over the last couple months. So I'm not exactly expecting him to have a ton of friends that he can go back to, but Schneider's still here, I guess. And yeah, I do think this is not a terrible option at all. He played fairly well here in Seattle. He had that one really bad game that discolored everything, but other than that, he was fine for the most part. He had a career year really in 2022 with the Chargers. And he's coming off a year that was a little bit down by his standard. It was his worst year in terms of receiving yards since 2019. So it's not everything is great. And this is a guy who's also been missing at least 1 or 2 games a year for the last couple years. So it's definitely not a beautiful match or anything like that. But if you're looking for a tight end to just hold the fort down for a year, maybe 2, I think this is pretty workable. PFF, by the way, thought he had a pretty good season in 2023. In 2022, I think they thought he was even a little bit better than that. So he's still generally considered to be a pretty capable player. Spotrac does have a market value page for him. They say 2 years, $17.4 million. So that comes out to about $8.6 million per year. Given the fact that he is an older player on the downward trend, I'm not sure it's going to cost something like this. I think you could be looking at something like 2 years for $14 million. Not too far away from what you'd pay a guy like a Colby Parkinson. Because I said Colby would be like 3 for 20. So if Gerald Everett is 2 for 14, that's the same idea, just one less year. And when you take a look at these other super athlete tight ends and what they get typically, I think it's reasonable. Again, he's on the downward trend, clearly. He's about to turn 30. I don't think you're going to have to pay this kind of money for a guy who's about to turn 30 years old. I just don't. He's made the money he's going to make for the most part in this league. And I know he never cracked it big with the monster contract, but that's because he was never a monster player. So those would be the first collection of guys that I take a look at when trying to find a starting tight end. There are more. I'm going to cover those in a future video, though, a couple of hours from now, in fact. So everybody continue to hold on to your seats. Let me know what you think about these three guys. They are probably the top three tight ends available in free agency this offseason. Hunter Henry, Dalton Schultz, Gerald Everett. Noah Fant's in there somewhere too, probably, but we already talked about him, so I'm not going to get into that too much. So would you be willing to pony up any amount of money for that collection? And by the way, the Gerald Everett thing, I know it says 2 years. It could be a 1 year deal. He's at that point in his career where maybe a 1 year deal is the best he can do. So if it's like 1 year for $7 million, does that change your perception? Do you feel better about that? Maybe a 1 year just stopgap solution is the best we can do right now. If we can't get Brock Bowers, it's not a bad idea. All right, I will see you guys later. Go Hawks. Let me know what you got down below, and more tight end talk later today.